You're driving home after a long day. Everything is fine. You're following the rules. And then you see them in your rearview mirror, flashing blue and red lights. Your heart starts pounding. Your hands grip the steering wheel a little tighter. Your mind races. What do I say? What do I do? Do I hand over my documents? Do I answer their questions? And somewhere in the back of your mind, a terrifying thought creeps in. What if I say the wrong thing and this whole situation spirals out of control? What if one wrong word, one wrong move costs me my freedom, my visa status, or even my future in this country? Today, I'm going to give you exactly 3 legal phrases that can protect you in a police traffic stop. Phrases that are backed by the United States Constitution, used by lawyers, and that every single person living in America needs to know. Whether you're a citizen, a green card holder, a visa holder, or undocumented, these words could change everything. So do not click away, because what you're about to hear might be the most important thing you ever learn about living in the United States. Welcome to USA Visa Explained, the channel that breaks down American laws, rights, and systems in a way that is clear, honest, and actually useful for real people living real lives in this country. I'm so glad you're here today because this topic, police traffic stops, is one of the most misunderstood and most feared situations that immigrants and non-citizens face in the United States. And the fear often comes not from the stop itself, but from not knowing what to say, what not to say, and what your rights actually are. Today, we fix that. We go deep, we go detailed, and by the end of this video, you will know exactly what to do and exactly what to say the next time those lights appear in your rearview mirror. Let's get into it. First, let's set the stage. Traffic stops in the United States happen millions of times every year. They are one of the most common forms of police-citizen interaction in America. And while many of them are routine, a speeding ticket, a broken tail light, an expired registration, they can also escalate very quickly, especially if the person being stopped doesn't know their rights or says something that unintentionally creates problems. For immigrants and visa holders, the stakes are even higher. A traffic stop that leads to an arrest, even for a minor offense, can have serious consequences for your immigration status, your visa, your green card application, or even your ability to stay in the United States. That is the reality, and we have to talk about it honestly. So, what is the most important thing to understand before we even get to the 3 phrases? It is this. In the United States, you have constitutional rights that protect you during a police encounter. And those rights apply to everyone on American soil, regardless of your citizenship status, regardless of your visa type, regardless of where you were born. The 4th Amendment protects you against unreasonable searches and seizures. The 5th Amendment gives you the right to remain silent and not incriminate yourself. These are not privileges, they are rights. And knowing how to exercise them calmly and correctly is the difference between a routine traffic stop and a life-altering legal situation. Now let's talk about what actually happens during a traffic stop. When a police officer pulls you over, they are allowed to ask you for 3 things: your driver's license, your vehicle registration, and your proof of insurance. In most states in America, you are legally required to provide these documents when asked during a traffic stop. That is the law, and you should always comply with this specific request. Have these documents ready, hand them over calmly, and do so without argument. This is not the moment to debate the officer or challenge their authority. You hand over the documents, and then the phrases we're about to discuss become your shield. But here is where so many people make their biggest mistake. After they hand over their documents, the officer starts asking questions, and the person, nervous, wanting to seem cooperative, wanting to seem innocent, starts talking. They start explaining where they were going, why they were driving that way, what they were doing earlier in the evening, and every single word they say can be used against them. Not because they're guilty, not because they did anything wrong, but because anything you say in a police encounter is evidence, and evidence can be used in court, in immigration proceedings, and in ways you never anticipated. The solution is not to be rude or confrontational. The solution is to know the 3 legal phrases that protect you, and to say them calmly, clearly, and confidently. Here is the first phrase, and this one is the foundation of everything. When the officer starts asking you questions beyond the basic document request, questions like, "Where are you coming from?" or "Have you been drinking tonight?" or "Do you know why I pulled you over?" You look at the officer calmly and you say these words, "I am exercising my right to remain silent." That is it. That is the first phrase. I am exercising my right to remain silent. 5 words that invoke one of the most powerful protections in the American legal system, the 5th Amendment right against self-incrimination. When you say these words, you are not being rude. You are not being uncooperative in an illegal sense. You are doing exactly what the Constitution allows you to do, and what lawyers across the United States advise their clients to do every single day. Why is this so important? Because anything you say, literally anything, can be used against you. Even innocent statements can be twisted, misremembered, or taken out of context. Even if you're completely innocent, the act of talking during a traffic stop can create inconsistencies, can reveal information about other matters, or can simply give the officer more reasons to prolong the stop and escalate the situation. Legal experts across the country, defense attorneys, civil rights lawyers, immigration attorneys, all say the same thing. The safest thing you can do during a police encounter is to exercise your right to remain silent and to say so clearly. Because here is something many people don't know. In some situations, if you simply stay silent without invoking the right, it can actually be used against you. But when you say, "I am exercising my right to remain silent," you have legally and clearly invoked that protection, and the officer is obligated to respect it. For immigrants and visa holders, this is especially important. Immigration courts and criminal courts are separate systems in the United States, but they talk to each other. Something you say during a traffic stop can end up in an immigration proceeding. Something that seems harmless in a criminal context can be devastating in an immigration context. So the first phrase, "I am exercising my right to remain silent," is not just legal protection. It is immigration protection. It is your armor. Now, practicing this phrase is something you should actually do out loud. Say it right now, with me. Say it calmly. Say it without emotion, without aggression, without apology. I am exercising my right to remain silent. Good. Say it again. I am exercising my right to remain silent. That calm, clear delivery is everything. The tone matters as much as the words. You are not challenging the officer. You are simply stating your constitutional position. That is your right, and no officer in America has the legal authority to punish you for exercising it. Now let's move to the second phrase. This one is for a situation that happens more often than you think. When the officer, after you've handed over your documents and perhaps invoked your right to remain silent, then asks if they can search your car. Maybe they say, "Mind if I take a look in the back?" Or, "Can I search your vehicle?" Or, "You don't mind if I have a look around, do you?" And this is where people make their second biggest mistake. They say yes. They say yes because they think saying no makes them look guilty. They say yes because they're nervous and they want to seem cooperative. They say yes because they don't know they have a choice. But you always have a choice. And the second phrase you must know is this: I do not consent to searches. I do not consent to searches. Say it calmly. Say it clearly. I do not consent to searches. Why is this so crucial? Because if you consent to a search, even verbally, even with just a nod, you have given up your Fourth Amendment right against unreasonable searches. Whatever the officer finds during that search, they can use against you. And even if they don't find anything illegal, a search can uncover things that create problems, immigration documents, paperwork related to your visa status, information about other people in your life. You have every right to say no to a search, and saying no is not an admission of guilt. It is the exercise of a constitutional right. Now, and this is very important, if the officer says they have a warrant, that is a different situation. A valid warrant issued by a judge gives law enforcement the authority to search your vehicle. In that case, you do not physically resist or obstruct the search. You can say, "I do not consent to this search," to put your objection on record, but you do not physically interfere. The distinction between a warrantless search and a warranted search is critical. In the vast majority of routine traffic stops, there is no warrant. The officer is simply asking and hoping you say yes. When you say, "I do not consent to searches," you have legally and clearly said no. And that matters enormously if the situation later goes to court or to an immigration hearing. There is something called the plain view doctrine that you should also know about. This means that if a police officer can see something illegal from outside your car without searching, they can act on that. This is why it's important to keep your car clean and to make sure there is nothing visible that could give an officer a reason to take further action. But for anything inside your car, anything that requires opening doors or looking through bags, you do not consent. I do not consent to searches. Those words are your Fourth Amendment in action. Again, let's practice this together. Say it out loud. I do not consent to searches. Say it without aggression. Say it the way you would say, "I prefer not to, thank you." Calm, clear, final. That is the energy you want. Not confrontational, not fearful, just constitutional. Now we come to the third phrase, and this one might surprise you. This phrase is for the moment when the situation starts to feel like it's escalating. When you're not sure if you're being detained or if you're free to go, when the officer keeps asking questions even after you've invoked your rights, when the stop is taking longer than it should and you're starting to feel anxious. In that moment, you look at the officer and you say, "Am I free to go? Am I free to go?" 4 simple words that carry enormous legal weight. Am I free to go? Here's why this phrase matters so much. Under American law, a police officer cannot legally detain you indefinitely without cause. If they have no legal basis to continue holding you, you have the right to leave. By asking, "Am I free to go?" you are directly forcing the officer to make a legal decision. Either they tell you yes, in which case you calmly collect your documents and leave, or they tell you no, in which case you are being detained and they must have a legal reason for that detention. The answer to this question determines your next move and your legal status in that moment. If the officer says yes, you are free to go. You say thank you and you leave. Calmly. No sudden movements, no rushing, just a composed, dignified exit. If the officer says no, you are being detained. Then you say clearly, "I am invoking my right to remain silent and I want to speak to a lawyer." That is the bridge from the third phrase back to the first, and it signals that you understand your rights and you intend to protect them. For non-citizens, visa holders, and green card holders, the phrase, "Am I free to go?" is particularly powerful because it creates a clear legal record. It shows that you were not attempting to flee, that you were not being aggressive, that you were simply exercising your right to move freely. This can matter enormously in immigration proceedings where the government might try to paint a traffic stop in a negative light. By asking, "Am I free to go?" in a calm, respectful tone, you are demonstrating that you understand the law and that you are acting within it. Let's also talk about something that many immigrants are afraid of during a traffic stop: the question of immigration status. Can a local police officer ask you about your immigration status? This is a complex area of law that varies by state and by city. In many cities and states across the United States, including so-called sanctuary cities, local police are prohibited from asking about or acting on immigration status. In other jurisdictions, officers may ask. Here is what you need to know. If an officer asks about your immigration status, you are not required to answer. You can invoke your right to remain silent by saying, "I am exercising my right to remain silent." Your immigration status is not something you are obligated to disclose during a traffic stop, and disclosing it can sometimes create more problems than it solves, depending on your situation. If you are a visa holder with valid documentation, it may be in your interest to have that documentation accessible, not in your car necessarily, but knowing where it is and being prepared. If you are on a visa that requires you to carry your I-94 or other documentation, make sure you have it, because that is a federal requirement, separate from the traffic stop itself. But the act of discussing your immigration status with a local police officer during a traffic stop is, in most cases, something you should approach very carefully and ideally with legal guidance beforehand. We also need to talk about the reality of what happens after you use these phrases. Some officers will be professional and respectful. They will acknowledge your rights, process your documents, issue whatever citation they need to issue, and let you go. Many traffic stops, even when you exercise your rights, end without incident. But some officers may push back. They may try to pressure you. They may say things like, "If you have nothing to hide, why won't you talk to me?" Or, "Not consenting to a search makes you look suspicious." And this is where you must stay strong. You stay calm, you stay quiet, you repeat your phrases if necessary, and you remember that your rights are not negotiable, no matter what an officer says in the moment. You should also know about something called pretextual stops. These are traffic stops where an officer pulls someone over for a minor traffic violation, a slightly wide turn, a brief rolling stop, a broken license plate light. But the real purpose is to investigate something else, to ask questions, to look inside the vehicle. Pretextual stops are legal under American law as a result of a Supreme Court ruling, and they are used frequently, particularly in communities of color and immigrant communities. Knowing this means understanding that a traffic stop is never truly routine. It is always an encounter that requires your full awareness and your full knowledge of your rights. Let's talk about what you should do physically during a traffic stop, because your actions matter just as much as your words. When you see the flashing lights, pull over to the right side of the road as soon as it is safe to do so. Pull over completely. Turn off your engine and turn on your interior lights if it is nighttime. Put both hands on the steering wheel where the officer can see them. If you need to reach for your documents, tell the officer first. "My license is in my glove compartment. May I reach for it?" And then reach slowly and deliberately. Do not make sudden movements. Do not reach under the seat. Do not get out of the car unless the officer asks you to. These physical behaviors communicate calm and cooperation, and they reduce the risk of a situation escalating unnecessarily. And if you have passengers in the car, instruct them before you even have an encounter. Because if your passengers don't know their rights and start talking or acting nervously, it can complicate your situation. Everyone in the car has the right to remain silent. Everyone in the car can say, "I am exercising my right to remain silent." And everyone in the car should remain calm, keep their hands visible, and follow the officer's instructions regarding physical movement. Let's also address the question of recording. In the United States, you generally have the right to record police officers in public places, including during a traffic stop, as long as you do not physically interfere with their duties. Recording a traffic stop can be valuable evidence if something goes wrong. However, this is a situation where you must use judgment. If you are alone, nervous, and trying to manage documents and phrases and stay calm, adding the complexity of recording may not be the right choice in the moment. If you have a passenger, they may be able to record. Many modern phones also have the ability to record audio without the screen being active. Know the laws in your state about recording and make a thoughtful decision. Now let's bring this all together in a scenario so you can see how these three phrases work in real life. You are driving. An officer pulls you behind, you pull over, turn off the engine, turn on the interior lights, put your hands on the wheel. The officer approaches your window, you roll it down. The officer says, "License, registration, and insurance, please." You hand them over, calmly and without comment. The officer then says, "Do you know why I pulled you over tonight?" You respond, "I am exercising my right to remain silent." The officer then says, "Have you had anything to drink tonight?" You respond, "I am exercising my right to remain silent." The officer then says, "Mind if I take a look in your car?" You respond, "I do not consent to searches." The officer pauses, takes your documents back to their vehicle, runs your information. They return and say, "Everything looks fine. I'm just going to give you a warning." And then you say, "Am I free to go?" The officer says yes. You say thank you, and you calmly drive away. That is a traffic stop handled correctly. No drama, no oversharing, no self-incrimination. Just constitutional, calm, and clear. In another scenario, the officer might not let you go so easily. They might say, "You are being detained." In that case, you stay calm. You say, "I am invoking my right to remain silent and I want to speak to a lawyer." And then you wait. You do not argue. You do not fight. You do not resist physically. Because fighting a police encounter on the street rarely ends well. The place to fight it is in court, with a lawyer, with the evidence of your correct behavior working in your favor. One final thing I want to address, and this is for every immigrant, every visa holder, every person who came to America from another country and is building a life here. You might be afraid that exercising your rights will make things worse. You might come from a country where asserting your rights against a police officer was dangerous, where the law did not protect you, where staying quiet and compliant was the only survival strategy. I understand that fear. It is real and it is valid. But America has a legal system that, while imperfect, does provide constitutional protections that are enforceable. And the way you access those protections is by knowing them and by using the phrases we discussed today. Silence is not defiance. Knowing your rights is not aggression. It is wisdom. It is self-protection. It is what every lawyer in America will tell you to do. And please, write these three phrases down. Put them in your phone. Save this video. Share it with your family members. Share it with the people in your community. Because information is protection. And the more people in immigrant communities know these phrases, the safer those communities become. Here is your takeaway from today. Phrase number 1. I am exercising my right to remain silent. Phrase number 2. I do not consent to searches. Phrase number 3. Am I free to go? 3 phrases, 3 constitutional shields, 3 tools that can protect your freedom, your future, and your life in the United States of America. If this video helped you, and I truly believe it did, please give it a thumbs up right now. It takes 1 second and it helps us reach more people who need this information. Share this video with someone you know, a family member, a friend, a neighbor, a community member who drives in America and doesn't yet know these phrases. Knowledge shared is protection shared. Subscribe to US Visa Explained so you never miss a video like this. We break down American law, immigration, and rights in a way that is real, honest, and built for people like you who are navigating life in this country every single day. Drop a comment below, tell us where you're from, tell us if you've ever been through a traffic stop and what happened, tell us what topics you want us to cover next. We read every comment and we build this channel for you. Until next time, stay informed, stay calm, know your rights, and remember, in America, the law is on your side when you know how to use it. Take care of yourself. We'll see you in the next video.